Park CrossFit, a show dedicated to helping you find enrichment for the other 23 hours of your day outside of the gym. Here's your hosts, Jason, Dave, and Corian.
Good afternoon, boys and girls. We are back for episode 36, Anchored at Harbor Park. I'm Coach Jason.
I'm Coach Dave.
Coach Corian.
And we have a very special guest today. I'll let you introduce yourself.
This is Carl Paoli. You may not know me, but I've been here before in some shape or form.
I am very excited for this episode. I started watching Carl's videos in 2013 when I was the teenager, as Carl explained the CrossFitter lifestyle today during the seminar. In my teenager stage when I was trying to do everything myself, I remember being in my garage doing your progressions, trying to learn how to do a cartwheel.
That's so crazy, man. That's crazy, because I was making it all up.
I remember there's the 4 points, there's the A, B, C, D. And
nice, yeah.
I don't know if you remember that one, but
dude, I made that up.
He doesn't
but
even remember
it totally works.
Hey,
I can show you right now. I got
bought
it.
in.
Yeah,
I was bought in, so that's the important
I'm so
thing.
glad.
We normally do icebreakers here, but we don't have one today. So I have a special one for you, Carl.
Shoot from the hip, dude.
So you asked us during the seminar, basically. A lot of it was kind of figuring out who you are, your purpose, like what your motivating direction is in life. And you gave us these 5 questions to kind of understand in a very clear and concise manner. So number 1, who are you?
Yeah, I'm Carl Paoli. I'm a guy who was born in the U.S., grew up in Spain, Swedish parents, grew up doing gymnastics, and now I'm in the fitness space.
What do you do?
Well, you're reading from the board, I see.
I'm reading from the board.
You know what? I do a lot of things, but at the root, I'm a teacher, and I teach people how to move better, physically, mentally, and emotionally.
What do you do, or who do you do it for?
I do it for anyone who is open.
What do they need?
Well, people need different things, but many behavioral psychologists have already done the studies on this, but people need to feel safe, need to be nurtured, need to belong to something, they need to have a sense of individuality and ultimately contribution. So I fall into any of those categories.
I can't read the last question.
The last one is what kind of impact do I make in people's lives? And to be honest with you, it really varies, but I think people that I've had the pleasure of working with get a sense of clarity and belonging and feel like they just feel fulfilled and like what they're doing is good enough, and that what they believe in and what is alive in them can actually materialize in some shape or form, whether we know what that looks like or not. And that kind of impact carries over into every aspect of our lives, whether, at times we get lost or not. It's a very powerful thing. And it can be measured in many ways. I help people make money. I help people hold a handstand longer or get their first muscle up, or, I just help them navigate conversation. Or simply identify what it is that they need to focus on right now to take their performance, whatever that may mean, to the next level.
What I think was most significant about, you just spent 2 hours talking about, how to be a better coach, and maybe 10% was about CrossFit.
Yeah.
90% was understanding people, feeling people. It's so little about the X's and O's about in the gym. It's so much more connecting with people and making those important relationships, understanding where they are and how we can make an impact in their life.
Yeah. I travel all around the world teaching people how to do handstands, push-ups, muscle-ups, whatever. And I always ask myself when I'm on the plane, I'm like, why am I going out here to teach someone how to do a squat? They can read that in a book. They can watch a video. They don't need me for that. So what is it that they really need? And all people need is just to have a mirror that's put up in front of them that showcases who they are, so they can look into that mirror and be like, oh man, this is something that I need, and I didn't realize this. This was a blind spot. And on top of that, I give them, the technical progressions to get there. And that's what's so cool, is that the technicality of it, the method, is only 10% or less.
Right.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that I really enjoyed from your seminars today was you talk about the hardship and you talk about the uncomfortable. And Jason and I are both reading the same book. I don't know if you read it, Brené Brown's
Daring Greatly.
Oh, yeah.
And it talks about being uncomfortable, and it talks about how you need that in order to get to that next level. And I think that understanding yourself is the most uncomfortable thing you could possibly put yourself through, because you really have to look at yourself and ask yourself those questions. And you saying, like, if you put your words that you wrote down about your story and who you were out there, would you be okay with that? And I was like, oh, I mean, like, I'm trying to be that person. I am getting better at it, but that's probably one of my biggest struggles is, if I put it all out there, is it okay? Do I feel comfortable with it? And then that's helping me definitely guide a lot of my decisions.
Yeah, it's tough. And I think this, I've gone through it. I guess I grew up being very sensitive to everything. And I realized that this sensitivity that seemed like a weakness when I was crying or didn't want to go on a field trip with school or didn't want to have a sleepover or whatever. And I was like beating my mom up for her trying to help me do these quote unquote normal things, is that what I thought was a weakness actually became my strength. And it was me being so in tune with what I was feeling. And then as I grew older, starting to express it through movement, which was in gymnastics. And then as I was moving, I was simply articulating verbally what it is that I was experiencing. And then eventually those words started to stick in my brain to the point where I could almost memorize what I was experiencing. And then eventually I created a framework for myself, and then I could let go and freestyle around it and allow myself to make mistakes and to be imperfect, because that's where I would find more structure and feel more grounded. So yeah, it's always been that for me. And of course I do things where I'm like, fuck, I should never have said that, or man, I should have checked myself. But that's a very powerful thing, and I think that's something that I'm going to deal with for the rest of my life, and I think everyone will do that. But as long as we're open to that, I think we see progress and growth. And like you were telling me earlier, you were saying, man, we want to make sure that our members here feel like what they're getting here transcends beyond the gym walls. And the only way we can do that is by encouraging people to take full ownership of the process that we're teaching them. And the only way they can do that is by being totally vulnerable and be like, you know what? I'm overweight, I feel crap, and I need help. How do I do this?
Right. Yeah. Cool. Well, speaking of structure, we do have a little bit of structure for this episode. We've kind of been just kind of shooting at the hip so far.
Cool.
I think we just all have some questions for you. Do either of you have ones that you want to start with?
I think that I could start. I was really prepared for this, and I was proud because we talked about this, and we're like, all right, let's have some questions ready. And I wrote down all these great questions the other day on a note card, and I can't fucking find it.
Oh, man.
So I'm shooting from like a couple that I was thinking of with your seminar today. But this is a icebreaker we had for a podcast earlier. And it was something that, with everything you talked about today, it feels like you've done a lot in your life. It feels like you've done, I did your movement, your freestyle movement seminar before, and hearing you talk today, you said like 637 times you've done this. And so what I want to know is, like, of all the things that you've done in your life, what's left? What is one goal that you want to accomplish in your life? It could be work-related, not work-related, personal, fun, anything.
And Corian just stole mine.
Yeah, it is a great question. So one of the things that I really want to get into in the next 10 years is, now I'm finally building the business that I want to build, which is this media company that I know will become a venture group, and this venture group will eventually be investing in different companies dedicated to different things, from services to products to tech. And ultimately to experiences. And one of the fields that I have not gotten into yet, but I'm really going to make a move on it, is the transportation industry.
Okay.
And I really believe that in the transportation industry, we have something very powerful to bring as movement coaches, which is having an experience that it feels comfortable, but also allows us to be challenged enough or create habits that are conducive for growth in the long run. And if this sounds totally crazy, I'll give you an example of what this is. But for example, for me, my if I think about money, for example, as a value, I have a couple money dials that I like to mess with. The number one money dial is reliability. I need things to be reliable. So for example, right now I'm going to fly to Columbus in an hour or two from now, and I want to make sure that there's reliability in the company that I'm investing.
Okay.
Right? So reliability is important. Right? So right now we drive vehicles that are pretty reliable. Like these vehicles will last you 150, 200, 250,000 miles. That will maybe last you 10, 15 years. So it's a very reliable investment. Now, transportation is changing. We're seeing it going from gas to electric, right? So all of a sudden there's this notion of sustainability. We want to see longevity. If you think about your travel experiences, let's say you're driving and I live in California, so you drive from San Francisco to LA, you go down Highway 5, which is a shit route, but it's the fastest one to get there. It's effective, it's efficient. But every stop has McDonald's, it has a Subway, it has some gas station with really bad food, it's in the middle of nowhere, it just feels crappy. And now that, for example, you have companies like Tesla coming into play, you see that at these gas stations or these little rest stations, there are supercharging stations. Mm-hmm. And around these supercharging stations that bring a whole new set of values, there's this crap environment, such as McDonald's or fast food or something that's just not conducive for our well-being as a human race. And this is something we know, it's proven, but we continue to nurture that. So we have an opportunity to align with the transportation industry and having these new things come up to actually start to instill new habits, new ways of doing things. So I think that's where we can start creating something special. And then, not to go too crazy, but for me, the adaptive athlete is extremely important. So, for example, if you are in a wheelchair, a lot of people, in order to improve the technology for the mobility of the individual, they put a little joystick on their wheelchair, mm-hmm. and now all of a sudden it's electric. But that joystick is not making them more mobile, it's actually making them less mobile. So what could we do by understanding basic principles of like leaning forward to move or leaning back and maybe creating a technology that looks more like a Segway applied to a wheelchair?
That was instantly what came to mind was, you're talking like a Segway, so you can use your balance.
Yeah. Okay. And the problem is that this is not cost effective yet, and there's not enough understanding of movement adapted to technology, and the market is not big enough for that to happen. But we will get to that point, so we need to be ready. Yeah. So when it comes to transportation, that's something I'm always thinking about. And then, making first class accessible for everyone.
I love your big vision. That's awesome.
Never settle.
Yeah.
My one question, Carl, is maybe just some of our athletes who are listening to this maybe don't understand who you are and what you come from, but like, what's your story? Like, how did you start your journey into CrossFit and like where you are today?
Yeah, I grew up doing gymnastics, and I was competitive and wanting to go to Olympics. And I for one, I didn't have the skills necessarily, and I was just a little bit different. I started a little late also. Bottom line is, I didn't put enough work into it, and I fell short. So when my gymnastics career ended, I explored different things, action sports. I saw that there was a lot of carryover from gymnastics into action sports. And then from there, I realized that I also wanted to go into business. I was really keen on making things, building things, selling things. Like I had a t-shirt company. I tried to build this wakeboard. And then I was like, oh man, everyone has a wakeboard, so why don't I make a wake skate? And then I realized, wait a second, everyone has a wakeboard on TV, but no one has a boat here, so no one's going to buy a wake skate. Okay, so that doesn't work either. And then eventually I got into acting, and I started doing like commercials, and I was trying to get into TV, and I wanted to be in movies. And that led to me understanding the power of media and how through media you could reach the masses. And with that came a sense of responsibility of saying and doing the right thing. which eventually, when CrossFit came around and I was in the fitness industry as a personal trainer, that's how I was making money at the time, I just leaned into it fully. I saw that there was an opening for gymnastics. People were teaching gymnastics, but it was traditional gymnastics. And for me, it didn't make sense that they weren't leaning into the freestyle aspect of CrossFit, which is this strength and conditioning method that is CrossFit, where everything kind of goes. And whatever works to get you results is what you should be doing. And it's up to you to organize it in a way where it produces individual results. So that's where I really got into things and kind of made a name for myself within the industry, wrote a book, and then I've been teaching seminars for 10 years. Yeah.
So that kind of gets into my question was, in the seminar you kind of talked about how you're Annie Thorisdottir's first coach. So you coached competitively. You were very competitive, obviously, in gymnastics. Then over these 10 years, you shifted to not necessarily caring about the competitive. Now we're coaching coaches and relating more to everyday people. So it's more about just general health and wellness. I mean, now we're talking about transportation. So this gradual transformation from competitiveness to more general. Can you kind of just explain why and kind of like how that took place in you?
Yeah. First and foremost, I was one of Annie's coaches, and not necessarily the first. Her head coach was Yami Tikkanen,
Okay,
and then
that's right.
Yami and I we started working together, and I got to become assistant coach. But I was the first part of the first coaching team that was built around her to win. So I just want to make sure that that's crystal clear, not taking away from anyone. But yeah, I think what I realized was I always wanted to be the best and kind of make it to the top and be on the biggest stages. And it got to the point where I did enough of seeing what the big stage looked like that I realized that it wasn't the big stage that I was really chasing. It wasn't the big paycheck. That's not what it was. It was something else. And I realized that having focus was important. But I didn't want to focus on a small piece of the pie. I wanted to hit something a little bit bigger. And the problem that people were struggling to solve was really taking ownership of their lives. And it was simply because they didn't know why they did things. They just did them because their environment was telling them that this is what we should be doing. And that's kind of where that came from. And then my ego, of course, wants to win and wants to do big things, and I want to go down the history books kind of thing and make a big splash. So the combination of those two things of like wanting to do good, be of value, and me wanting to challenge myself and be a big deal, combined produced this kind of drive for tapping into what is at the root of us as individuals. And if I can do it with myself and I see positive results, just maybe people can do it for themselves as well. And that's what I live with. And that's the reason I get on a plane and I'm still excited. And I thrive standing in front of a group of people like this. Because I learn so much every time. It's like I am a sponge, and I'm like, thank you very much, guys. You just gave me a lot of information.
When they think they're learning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very interesting because my background is very similar. I wasn't obviously as competitive as you, in your prior, like gymnastics, Olympic national champion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought I was good at CrossFit. I wanted to get better. Realized that I'm probably not going anywhere in the sport. And then things evolved, so started coaching. And then now, we open our own gym. And kind of like you, I'm kind of dabbling in all different sorts of things, own an apparel company as well as the gym, and then doing some other stuff on my own. So when I'm doing your exercise over here of like, what do you do? It's like, I don't really know, so I'm trying to filter it. And that's the bottom line is I'm trying to empower people. Not as neat and concise as you just laid it out for us.
Well, it probably is. It's just articulated different when it comes from me than when it comes from you.
Right.
And sometimes people have the ability to do it in words. Other people do it in actions. Other people do it in visuals. So just the fact that comparison exists is a chance for us to acknowledge that may just be what is holding us back.
Right.
But the fact that you know that you want to empower people, that's a big deal.
And when you said teaching people to take self-responsibility is essentially what, like if I said what my mission was before that, it would have been empowering people. But I think I'm like getting deeper now. I think that's more what, because I kind of my brain kind of had that like light bulb moment when you said that. So that's pretty cool.
That's very cool. That's very cool. I mean, that makes my day. I think we have to go through what writers call the hermeneutic circle, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's basically like you have an idea. Like, I want to empower people. Cool. And you can say, I want to empower people. Now, you need to start breaking that down into as many pieces as you can. So you need to go through the whole process. It's kind of like you start writing the book. And then at the end, you bring it all back together. I want to empower people. And now it makes sense. You've gone through the full hermeneutic circle that it's called. And that's why we can't just live off of inspirational quotes on Instagram. Like we need to read books, write books. We need to have conversation, and we need to elaborate on concepts, and we need to stress test that and challenge it and stretch it and apply it, see it in the context, and then challenge ourselves to see if what we're saying is really true. Is that really what you want? Is that empowering, or does it just sound nice?
I think that's so important. That was something that I took from your seminar today too. A couple months ago, 8 months ago, I had an idea. I had a vision in my mind where I wanted to go with my competitive side and nutrition and everything. And then I started getting closer to that goal. And like you said, what's it desirable? And realizing what I was not giving up. I wouldn't say giving up. It's just choosing what was more important at that time. I was like, this is not in alignment with my values or what I believe in. And so I started going in another direction and doing some other things and really kind of expanding on what was really important for me. And you kind of mentioned like reading books and doing all that stuff. So one of the biggest things that's for me is like, I love reading. I have like a stack of books next to my bed. I have Audibles. I have my Kindle. I have probably 5 or 6 books that I'm like delving into. So with all of your mindset stuff that I just am eating up today,
that's cool.
What are some of your favorite books, or what are you currently reading?
Well, I'm a terrible reader. Okay. And I struggle to hold focus in reading. But like one of the books that I really appreciate is Daniel Pink's Drive. Okay. I really loved Shoe Dog. He's the founder of Nike. That was a great book.
Yeah, Jason just read that one.
I felt like we could totally relate to that. A Strike Movement, which is a footwear and apparel company. We kind of experienced this a lot. I mean, those are some books that I really enjoy. I'm just listening right now to Michelle Obama's Becoming.
Heard some great things about that.
Yeah. I think Brene Brown is an awesome author. I think someone like Gary Vee, who I didn't fully understand before, now I can really appreciate. I'm like, oh yeah, he's really just speaking what is true to him. And he was ahead of his game when it came to really expressing what this whole social media was and what brand meant. And that's something that I encountered in 2010. And I didn't realize what that meant. I'm a big YouTuber, so I love YouTube.
Yeah.
And I love watching we call it at home my dirty little secret. Yeah. Which is, I love watching like David Dobrik and Liza Koshy vlogs. I don't know if you guys even know what that is.
I don't know.
But I'm fascinated because the business that they do through this media and the kids that they impact and the way that they impact them is very, very powerful. And at first glance, you may look at it and be like, this is so stupid. But then you start to study it and you're like, whoa. I didn't even realize, and they're ahead of the curve. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I do. I have a side company as well because, that's what we do. And it's funny because I actually do a vlog because I just feel like talking is more my forte than writing. And so that's what I'm going have been working on, and I'm trying to get into a lot more of watching those and stuff, and checking out different people. I have checked out Gary Vee and all of those. So interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I consume a lot of podcasts too, so I'll be listening to this one.
We'll be sharing it with you.
I thank Jay for the podcast. I really didn't even know what a podcast was until we went on a business trip, and like shortly before that, he was like talking about podcasts and Audible books, and I was like, let's check it out.
I think for most people, so I'll start with Barbell Shrug.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Barbell Shrug was definitely those guys were awesome when they stepped into the scene, which I've been fortunate enough to be on their podcast a couple times, and it's been really cool to see that. Yeah, so cool.
So that would be my question then. I know you read a lot, you said, but what's your favorite podcast?
I do read a lot, actually. I just don't finish a lot of books because I'm like,
You're like me.
I'm not.
I'm totally out. It's like,
I have to finish a book.
I can't do, like, it's one book until it's done, and then I'm on to the next.
Yeah,
if it doesn't catch me, I'm done.
I have discipline for certain things. With reading, I start kind of like, next chapter, okay, this is interesting.
Well, I mean, they do say, like, if you're not getting anything from it, don't waste your time.
Yeah,
so,
that's me.
Maybe in the future you will get something different.
I have to finish a book. Like, I don't care how bad it is. Like,
but I consume insane amount of content.
Nice.
Yeah, but what was your question? Sorry.
Who's your favorite? Like, if you're listening to a podcast right now, what's your?
So I have a couple that I like. One that I'm listening to is this Swedish podcast called the Success Podcast, but it's all in Swedish.
Nice.
And the reason I like it is he's interviewing people. 99% of them are Swedish, so I enjoy listening to Swedish speakers that are talking about similar things to what we're seeing here. But hearing them speak from a more, from almost like a smaller perspective is because Sweden has 9 million people living there, and here we have 300 million. So it's a big difference. But the fact that they're arriving at the same conclusions, they're making equal amounts of impact, and that they can do it in the language that they natively speak allows you to get a slightly different perspective. So I'm really enjoying that one. And then, yeah, I mean, I've listened to Gary Vee stuff. I listen to some of these vloggers, YouTube vloggers, just like say stupid stuff. I love listening to comedians. They're fun. Joe Rogan always has some interesting, some people on it. Yeah. And usually for Joe Rogan, I go into like the best of the week on YouTube. And then from there, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy was cool. Let me listen to him. Yeah. Siphon through them.
So just this totally caught me off because you're listening to a podcast and it's in Swedish, which obviously you said your parents are Swedish, but you grew up, you said in Portugal?
In Spain. Yeah,
okay.
in Spain.
So you also speak Spanish?
That's right.
So how many languages do you speak?
Speak technically 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And you said this morning English is your third language.
Yeah, that was the language that when I moved to the U.S. in 2004, I spoke such bad English that when I was calling in for service, I had to press 2 for Spanish. Yeah, like I did not understand what they were saying, so I was looking for someone.
And that was only 14 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow.
Never guessed.
I would have never guessed that either, and that was not something I knew about you. Yeah. So interesting.
In fact, I met my wife at that time, who wasn't even my girlfriend or anything. She was just a friend and colleague. She's like, oh man, this guy's kind of good looking, but he sounds dumb. That's what she said. I'm attracted to him, but he's dumb. I couldn't speak English.
Yeah, sometimes you don't need to speak.
You know what she said to me? She would. I would always want to like try to talk to her and like try to engage in conversation. And one day she was like, "You're so obnoxious," and I was like, "What does that mean?" and she said, "You're annoying." I was like, "What?" I thought I was like the nicest guy ever. Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh man, obnoxious. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have a cutoff point here.
Okay.
When do you need to get out of here?
I need to get out of here in 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can keep going a little bit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
this kind of goes along with the books and the podcast, but who's your biggest influencers?
Man. So I would say my mom and my dad are definitely my biggest influences, and then my siblings for sure. My
many siblings
wife.
do you have?
There are 5 of us. So I have older sister, older brother, younger sister.
No?
Yeah.
So you're the
Smack
middle of
dab
5.
Yeah.
I'm the middle.
You're the middle.
I'm the middle
Yeah.
of
That's why
5.
we seek so much attention.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I seek it.
Come on, please just acknowledge me. I'm here. Right here, guys. Right here. Right here, please.
I could say so many things right now.
Yeah.
I will not.
Yeah, so there's a big influence. And then my wife has just been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I used to be a judgmental little prick, and she really, she stands for social justice and fairness, and she's been amazing. And then my wife and I, 5 years ago, we became foster parents and ended up adopting a teenager. That was a big eye-opener for me. So she's been amazing. And she still keeps, me in check. And
Well, she's the one who set this seminar up for us, so
Yeah,
it's
this-
been a pleasure to work with.
yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome. So yeah, it's cool. It's very cool. Very cool.
Do you still eat fruit in the dark in the morning? first
No,
thing?
you know what? I've
Change
actually been
routine up?
changing it up a little bit. Yeah, I've been like cutting out the fruit. Like today was the first time I had a little dairy in a while, so I'm like cleaning up. I'm gonna go on a little fast, do a colonic. Start 2019 with like a
There you
bang.
go.
Yeah, but I do sit in the dark as much as I can in the morning. The earlier I can get up, the better. And like one of my favorite things is when I travel international, I'm like, yes, I'm coming back. I'm gonna be super jet lagged, which means I'm gonna wake up super early. So I'm always stoked about that.
One question that I have that I don't know if this will relate. I know that we have a lot of small business owners and stuff like that, so hopefully they'll get this podcast and learn a lot from you as well. But I'm very, and I don't know if I'm using the right word, but captured by your speaking ability and just like how you present. Like you own a room and you just make it so engaging. And I want to get into more speaking and sharing my passion with other people. What are some things that I could do or places that I could look to get better at speaking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first and foremost, thank you. That means a lot because I am very harsh on myself, and I don't see myself as a great speaker.
Oh, I think you're amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. I struggle with that. So that's the first thing. That's something that I have to work on and really take ownership. Is like, yeah, you're a speaker. You deserve to be like on the highest, biggest stage and do the thing, and you got this kind of thing. And one of the reasons is because I travel all around the world. And I teach these seminars, and I teach them in gyms. So it kind of feels like I'm like an artist, or I play in a band, and I travel all around the world, but I play in dive bars, and that's nothing to say about a gym setting. I'm just saying that it just feels like that. It's like, oh yeah, I travel all around the world, and I play in dive bars. That being said, what has allowed me to maybe get to a point where I'm communicating the way that you're perceiving it is because I've done the small gigs that have slowly started to build up. And it starts on a 1-on-1, and then like you're 3-to-1, and then 10-to-1, and then 50, and then 100, then 1,000, and then, now I know that if you were to, put me in front of this mic and be like, yo, speak for 10 minutes, and you have 1 million people listening, I'm like, okay, let's let it rip. I feel very comfortable doing that.
Awesome.
It's like getting in front of a camera. I remember when the first time one of our business coaches was like, all right, you're going to make this content video and you need to go. And I was listening back to one of my YouTube videos the other day and I'm like, man, I was so stiff. I'm like, almost like, what do I do with my hands? And now like I go and I try to interview a client like once a week to just showcase the results. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Like, you're just going to talk to me. And like, it comes very natural to me now because I've been doing in front of the camera for a while, so
yeah,
it's always, and I'm always like, don't worry about it. And they're all stiff. I can see it in their face. They start hiking the shoulders, and I'm like, I remember that. I remember that feeling. It's just like you said, the more you do it.
Yeah, you got to do it a lot, and then seek out like mentors and people that you feel comfortable around. I had the chance of being directed and mentored by my friend now, Sal Masekela, who was basically the announcer for the X Games for like 13 years. And you maybe know of his dad who passed recently, a very famous trumpet player, jazz musician, Hugh Masekela. He was from South Africa. He was like one of the guys that Nelson Mandela made sure to bring back to the country when he came out of prison. Well, Sal Masekela is doing great things. Now works for National Geographic, has his own production company, yada, yada, yada. One thing that he taught me that was really, really powerful is he said, have a beginning, have an end, let it rip in the middle. And that's it.
I like that.
I do like that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so good. And that feels really, really comfortable.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't do a ton, but past like 8 years or so of public speaking, being a CrossFit coach, obviously that's every day. So I've gotten more comfortable, but like the most notable thing is my best man speech for my brother. Everyone was like, oh, are you going to memorize it? It's like, no, I don't want a structured speech. Like, I know what I want to talk about, and then what comes out for those is what's going to happen. And it was a great speech because of that. I think people get so lost in, like, I have to hit my points exactly.
That's me.
Yeah, for sure. And that gets really confusing because you're bound to mess a step up. And if you mess it up and then all of a sudden you're off kilter, it's hard to kind of regain that composure. And
even for that speech, so I had 4 points I want to hit on. I totally blanked the first one. Like, I do not remember what I'm going to start with. So I jumped to number 2, and then number 1 came back to me after, and no one had any idea.
Right, maybe number 1 was meant to be number 4 or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And then just like anything we talk about in the gym, it's just doing the reps, you know?
Yeah, because I do, obviously, we've had our gyms now for over 3 years. And, I feel very comfortable, like, if a coach is all of a sudden like, hey, I'm sick or something happened, I got to go, you got to jump into class. We try to set out game plan, but I could jump in it in a heartbeat and let's go. And we're right by Carthage, a college in Kenosha, and I was asked to speak for like orchestra and like how fitness would improve them and their mobility and their movement. And like I had my speech and like I had my bullet points and I didn't have a way to project it, and I felt way off. I was like, this is like at the end, I was like, there's so many things I missed. And the instructor was like, oh, that was wonderful. And we even like had some people talk to me afterwards. And so I think like just realizing that it doesn't have to be perfect, and that, I told myself a story that it was terrible and, but probably no one else noticed or whatever.
Right. So, it's just like, oh, that's who she is. That's awesome. I love it. Thank you.
And we talked about this on our last podcast. We talked about failure.
Yes.
We were discussing that. That was a topic that we wanted to hit on was everyone fails, and I'm sure you've had your failures, but we use it
100%.
And we use it, and we talked about how failure is actually the way to go forward. And we talked about, well, maybe not using failure as the word because it has a negative connotation, but using it as it's practice. So like what Corian's talking about there with, I forgot my points. Well, as you do it more often, like you didn't even have any points today. You probably, it's all in your head.
I knew exactly what I was going to do today. Like I had these things that I wanted to deliver on, but then my job is to read the audience. And, I kind of carry over the energy that was in the previous session. I carried into this session. You kind of see the new faces. You put it on them. They start to tell you what they need, and then you start speaking to that.
Not to interrupt, but I have a funny story from Chris Hinshaw. He did a seminar in Chicago in May earlier in the year. Then we went and got dinner afterwards. I'm sure you know.
Yeah. He actually attended one of my seminars before he started the whole thing.
Well, so the story was at the seminar, someone mentioned, or it was like after, and they mentioned you can see like the twinkle in his eye, like how much he cares. And I'm not sure he wants me saying this.
Whatever.
But he's not going to.
Chris, you're fine. You got this.
But he goes, that they said you could see the twinkle in his eye, how much he cared. He goes, it's not that I don't care, but I was in sales for 20 years. I know how to make it look like I care.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, totally. I mean, selling is one of the highest forms of education and acknowledgement. And like one of the things that I really liked about Zig Ziglar, who I was listening to when I was like 15, come on, like tell me everything about sales, was interesting. Like one of the things he talked about was his experience when he went to buy a new car. So he shows up in this like old beat up car. And the first thing the salesman that was there to greet him said was, "What a nice car you're driving." And he's like, "Yeah, thank you so much." And the guy was like, "You don't even need a car. You have a great car," kind of thing. And already it's like, oh man, I'm really appreciating what I have right now. But let me show you what you could be driving with just a little bit of, and then you get them across that finish line. But So I really appreciate sales because it is a very high form of education. And if you do it in a genuine fashion, like if you really mean, oh shit, that's a nice car. You'll feel it. You'll be like, yeah.
Right.
And you can sniff out the dirty ones.
Yeah.
That's why everybody doesn't like to buy a car.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like this is the big thing that I try to tell people is like, if you think I'm doing this out of charity, think again, man. Like I plan on making millions of dollars. But the reason I plan on making millions of dollars is so I can build this other thing that I know is going to make even more of an impact.
Right.
And the impact that I want to make is positive.
Yep.
So heck yes, I'm going to sell you on my program and I'm going to tell you that my seminar is the best. And if it's not the best, let the market speak and let me up myself to the point where I am competitive and the best.
Yeah.
I love your like challenging nature. Like you're like, okay, make me improve that. Make me keep upping that game. I really like that. People talk all the time. They always ask us, especially with the 2 locations, they're like, there's another gym that's coming down here from Milwaukee. And it's not far to begin with, but they're opening a second location in Racine. And everybody's like, are you guys worried? You're gonna no, that's just gonna make us be better. That's gonna make sure that we're not slacking and we're giving our members everything that they deserve and they need. And I really like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I forget what podcast I listened to that talked about this, which was about Southwest and how Southwest Airlines.
Yes,
what podcast?
They've been on a couple different ones, and NPR did it. How I Built This.
Oh yeah, How I Built This. Yeah,
I love that podcast.
I mean, I think they had like 4% of the market share, but the way that they owned that percent of the market share was by solving the problems of quick turnover.
Yep.
Oh yeah, you know what? We only have 1 or 2 planes. We need to make as many flights as we can in one day. What problem do we need to solve? It's the transitions. Let's get the transitions locked up.
Yeah.
And then that way we can maximize our efforts. And I think that's amazing, is to have a solution-conscious mindset.
Yeah, I like that solution-conscious mindset.
And that actually came from my dad. His company, he had this like polo shirt, and I was a kid when I saw this. But in the back, all it said in Spanish was solutions. And I was like, oh yeah, solutions. That's what we're here, provide solutions. So my dad is a big influence. Awesome. Yeah.
So we're doing this in front of a live audience, so a little bit different. We got 3 people.
We got an audience of 3 now.
People.
But earlier on, we had some people, and they were just talking amongst each other.
That's why you heard the noise in the background. So we apologize for that, but it got quieter. Do you have any questions for Carl?
You said you learned so much every time you do this. What's one thing you learned from your first course and one thing you learned from the second course?
Yeah, so the first course that I did in relationship to this, I had no clue what I was really trying to say. I was saying these things, but I didn't know what I was trying to say. And now that I know what I'm trying to say, I actually get to participate in the conversation. And I guess at a technical level, it's timing, it's space, it's what questions to ask. It's slowly starting to crystallize, and this is probably like one of the last ones I was going to do in person. This one we did today, I was thinking of taking it online, but today I actually had this feeling where I was like, wait a second, maybe I need to be in person with people a little bit more for this setting still. Maybe I need another 100 reps or something, and how do I do that in a way that works for what I'm currently trying to develop? So that's something I got out of today, which is a big deal.
Awesome, yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Jared, you got anything? No? You just...
They're talking fitness over there.
We're talking fitness.
They're just waiting for us to get done so they can work out more.
Oh, they're writing
Blair
down their
wants to
workout.
know.
Start warming up, kids. Start warming up.
Blair wants to know how
Take a lap.
How he can be as cool as you.
How I can... I'm not that cool. Ask my wife.
You got another one?
When you were presenting, you said you did 3 questions, 1 statement, and 1 point of fact.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start doing that? How did you arrive at that?
That started from the beginning. The way I was teaching was always asking questions, was because I only knew so much. So by asking questions, people were telling me what I should know.
Yeah.
So basically, any service that I have, any seminar, any product is all based off of things that people have asked me, and I've tried to answer the best I can, and then done it over and over again until it's proven to become universal, meaning it doesn't matter if I'm teaching in Brazil or in Japan or here, everyone ends up with the same solution or the same answer, and that crystallizes and now becomes part of the content. And because I've done it so many times, some people are like, whoa, you're like 10 steps ahead of me. No, I'm not. And they feel like, oh my God, you're like a guru or a genius. No, I just did the repetitions, and this is the common ground. So yeah, that's why I ask 3 questions and deliver on one piece of information. Yeah, seminars, coaching. I mean, I remember I started coaching when I was 14, so that was a while ago. What is that, 25 years ago? So it's crazy.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. I still love watching back to your videos.
It was 20 years ago.
Your
20 years ago.
Your YouTube videos.
21 years ago. Yeah.
I still pull them up.
Your YouTube videos, yeah, we use them a lot for like our
That's
gymnastic
crazy.
drills and techniques and stuff.
I usually search, there's certain people we search. So you're one of them if it's gymnastics. So I had like a member the other day was like, I need to get a handstand. And I'm like, Carl Paoli, gymnastics.
That's amazing. That's amazing because there are coaches out there in our space that are technically way better than I am, but they're never going to beat me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the ego part of me where I'm like, yeah, you want to compete? Let's see what you got, son.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I think you need a little bit of that.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Yeah, you have to, because I mean, if I didn't find this balance between like, okay, I'm confident and I have this ego, I wouldn't go out and do these speeches, and I wouldn't go out and do stuff, and then I wouldn't meet more people, which then brings more knowledge into me. So you kind of have to have that balance. You do need a little bit of an ego.
100%, and I'm 100% aware of that too.
Yeah.
And I'm not scared to talk about it. Because for me, that's part of the thing that fuels me. Like, I love being competitive. I've questioned myself, like, who am I to be doing this? But then again, it's like, I have the capacity to do it. I like doing it. People do benefit from it when I am fully myself. So why not go all the way?
And like you said in the seminar, ego is not good or bad. Ego is an axis. It's kind of up to you if you want to use it for good or bad.
Yeah, you can either be friends with your ego or you can succumb to your ego. And I think it's important for us as human beings to befriend our egos. Yeah.
I like that, because I think for me, I will 100% say that I used to let my ego drive me. I come from a different background. Dave and I both left our careers to open this gym, and we talk about our prior life all the time, and that definitely gave me a big ego. And then I think I went too much the other way of trying to not have an ego and be like, okay, you're just gonna be relaxed and you're not gonna be showboaty and you're just gonna be, and then I became too submissive. And I feel like I started to let people almost push me around and question what I was doing. And now I'm finding this balance. Like, I don't have to rub it in your face, but I don't have to hide it from me either.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most powerful things I think you can do in developing basic emotional intelligence, which is holding 2 opposing thoughts in your brain at once. It's like, stand up there, be the man, teach the seminar, but at the same time, be 100% vulnerable and honest with yourself as you're doing it. And whatever you're saying, say it genuinely, and then give yourself space and time to be as compassionate as possible as you're doing it, especially with yourself. And I think that is very hard to do. But I think that's what we're meant to learn in this life. That's my take from it.
So we had a very hodgepodgey episode here, talked about all sorts of different things. I think we're at about the time cap, 4:20.
Yeah, I think you have to catch a flight.
Yeah,
we promised you.
Carl's got to get down.
Yeah,
to
420. It's a perfect number. Straight from California.
Yep. What is the length of this podcast this day?
We're at 48 minutes right now.
50 minutes.
Yeah, right around 50 minutes.
Everyone's still listening. Highest ratings ever.
Yes. I'll take it.
We had a blast.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
We'll
good.
We'll reach out again and do another.
If you're still doing in person, obviously.
Yeah. I will continue to do work in person for a long time. I think this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
And I'd like to comment on your awesome sweatshirt.
Oh, yeah, of
so
course,
if you're
dude.
watching
thanks for hooking it up. Like I was feeling a little chilly, but now,
you got a
Very
sweet
warm.
ass Harbor Park CrossFit sweatshirt.
dude, so good.
Awesome.
So, all right, have a safe trip.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And stay classy, Harbor Park.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Anchored at Harbor Park CrossFit. If you would like further information about our programs, visit www.harborparkcrossfit.com. We hope you'll tune in next time.